Hi everyone! In this video, we are going to learn how to use the Jupyter Notebook in detail. So, first of all, I want to open my Jupyter Notebook. First, I need to open my command prompt as you remember from our previous lessons. So, I'm opening my command prompt. I write cmd and press enter. As I've said before, if you're using Mac or Linux operating system, you can use your terminal to open your Jupyter Notebook. Then in here I write Jupyter Notebook. In case of you're using Mac or Linux operating system, you can use terminal to open your Jupyter Notebook as well, and you can write Jupyter Notebook into your terminal as well. So I'm running this by pressing enter button, and our Jupyter Notebook is opening right now. When it's opened, I can see there are lists of my files as shown in here. So I want to go to my desktop. I'm clicking on desktop icon. And in here, let's try to create a new Python 3 notebook. So I'm coming new button in here and clicking on the Python 3 notebook. As you can see, our Python 3 notebook is created for me. So I'm changing the title of this notebook as my first Python notebook. I'm clicking on rename button. As you can see, the name of this notebook is changed. As you can see, our notebook is created on my desktop. Actually, the using of the Jupyter Notebook is quite extensive topic, but I'm going to try to teach you the most used features of the Jupyter Notebook in here. And I want to tell you about a really useful guide to Jupyter Notebook. First, we are opening a new tab in our browser, and in here we write Jupyter Notebook Manual. And I'm pressing enter. Then we're clicking on the first website that comes out as a result. I'm clicking on it. Now here it comes the guide of the Jupyter Notebook. In here you can learn everything about the Jupyter Notebook. If you want to know for further information about the Jupyter Notebook, you can take a look at this website. I'm using this resource too while I'm preparing these videos. You can also take a look at this resource yourself if you wish. So I'm closing this tab. Let's try to execute a Python code in here if you wish. This rectangular area is called a cell in the Jupyter Notebook. And I write print welcome to Python. To this cell, well, we will see that what does mean of these codes in our next lessons, so you don't need to understand for now. In here, I wrote a Python code and I have placed this Python code into this cell. Now, in order to run this code, we need to click on the Run Cell button in here. Now, in order to run this code, we need to click on the Run Cell button in here, as you can see. When we click on this button, we will see that our code is executed. Or I write Python is great. To be able to run this code again, we can click on this Run Cell button again, or there is a useful shortcut in here. If you don't want to click on the Run Cell button again and again, you can execute our Python codes by pressing Shift plus Enter buttons. This is very useful shortcut combination. We can execute our Python codes by pressing Shift plus Enter buttons. This is very useful shortcut combination. We are pressing Shift Enter. And as you can see, our code is executed perfectly again. You can use this shortcut if you wish. So in the Jupyter Notebook, sometimes your code may run for a very long time. In kind of these situations, you can interrupt the working of the Jupyter Notebook for a certain period of time. I want to show you an example for this. We will see this in detail in our next sections. In our next lessons, we will have an example of related with while loop, while true example. So I write while true, and I'm writing a pass keyword in here. Don't worry, we are going to see all of these in our next lessons. So actually, this means an infinite loop. This loop works forever until we don't interrupt this loop. So let's run this code by pressing Shift Enter. You'll see that an asterisk sign in here. In fact, that means this code that will work forever. Right now, as long as we don't close our Jupyter notebook, this code will continue to work forever. However, we can stop this code running without forcing to close the program in here. To be able to do this, we can click on the interrupt button in here. We can click on the interrupt button in here, so we can stop this kernel's working by interrupting. I'm clicking on this interrupt button. When I click on this button, as you can see, it is printed keyboard interrupt message on the screen. Or we can do this one more way. I'm coming to the kernel menu and just click on the interrupt option. This will do the same thing too. These are the methods how we can interrupt a program. So what if I want to add a new cell under this cell? To be able to add a new cell, we can click on this plus button. I can add as many cells as I want by pressing plus button, as you can see. Or we can add a new cell with using B button. As you can see right now, I'm pressing B button and new cells are being added just below the existing cells. Or we can add new cells by pressing A button and new cells are being added above the existing cells. Let's try this one. We write print Python. And what if I want to move up or down cells? What am I supposed to do for this? We will either press this button or press this button. This button moves selected cells up and this button moves selected cells down. When I click on this, as you can see, my code is moving up, and when I click on this, my code is moving down. So what if I want to delete a cell? I will click on this cut button for that. Actually, I'm cutting the cells. In here, I'm deleting cells that I want by clicking on this button. I'm clicking on this. As you can see, our cell is deleted. Or we can do this with one more practical way. So I'm writing print Python again. And I want to delete this cell, so we can double click on the D buttons. As you can see, our cell is deleted. Now let's make an example to learn string methods that we will see in our next lessons. You don't need to understand for now. We will see these topics in detail in our next lessons. So I write S is equal to Ömer and run this cell by pressing Shift Enter. Now I have a variable named S. In order to learn this strings methods, I can do something like this. I write S dot pressing top button. In this way, we can see all the available functions that we can apply on this string. For instance, I can write s.upper. I can apply this function on this string, or I can write s.count. Whatever you want from the list. So by pressing top key, we can learn all the available functions or methods that we can use on this string. So what can else we do? Again, I write s dot, pressing tab button. Let's say that I want to use starts with function. I start to write this function, but I forgot the rest of them. So what should I do now? Again, after starting to write, we can press the tab button and it will complete automatically the rest of them for me. So we don't need to write all of them of this method. You can also these useful methods while you're coding. So what else? Let's say that you wrote a function, but you couldn't remember what that function does. What should you do to find out what the function does? Googling? Maybe, but that is not so practical. So actually, there is a much more practical way to learn what the function does. You can just press Shift plus Tab combination. You can just press Shift Tab combination. By pressing Shift Tab, you can learn what the function is used for. So I'm pressing Shift Tab. As you can see, we were able to see what this function is used for. Or we have another method. We can use this method for functions or objects that we want to get all the information about. So I write help in here. And inside of these parentheses, I'm passing my object in it as a parameter. By doing this, I will be able to get all the information about this object's methods or functions. Help function is a Python built-in function so that we can use for getting any information about objects that we want. We will be able to find out everything we need to learn in any data types or any methods with using this help function. It's extremely useful. You can use this function as well. This is a super useful built-in function that can be used to return the Python documentation of a particular objects, methods, or attributes, etc. This is such a helpful tool, especially for beginners. All you need to do is pass the object or whatever you'd like to help with through the parameters of the help function to get a nice background on what it does and how it works through the official Python documentation. For instance, I write age is equal to 28 and I run it by pressing Shift Enter. And then I want to get all the information about this variable, this object, so I write help function. And inside of these parentheses, I'm sending my object, which is age. And when I run it, I see that this number is an integer data type. So as you can see, all the features related with the integer data types are listed on my screen. So let's make another example. I write s is equal to Ömer, which is my name, as you know. I run it and I write s.count function. So I want to get the information about this function. So what am I supposed to do now? I can get the information with using help function. So to do this, I'm writing help in here. And when I execute this by pressing Shift Enter, I can get the information what the count method does. So what else we can do? For example, you may want to delete all the results in this file, but you don't want to make any changes in your codes. You want to run the codes in this file from the beginning. You want to restart the kernel. So how can you do this? To do this, we can go to the kernel menu and click on the restart kernel. When we click on this, it's asking me, do you want to restart the current kernel? All variables will be lost. It's warning us, and I'm clicking on restart button. As you can see, kernel will start. There's a note in here restarting kernel. it says kernel ready. Now our kernel is ready. As you remember, we had already defined s variable before in this file, but in order to see s again, when I write s and when I run this by pressing Shift Enter, as you can see, we get an error. To be able to run this without getting any error, we need to run this cell again where the variable exists. And I'm running this again. Now, when we run this, I can see my variable again. So remember, if you click on the restart button, restart your kernel, you need to run each cell again. But if you want to restart kernel and you don't want to run each cell again, you can click on the kernel menu and you can click on restart and run all button in here. With this way, we will able to restart our kernel and run each cell. With this way, you can restart your kernel and all the cells are executed automatically by the Jupyter Notebook. I'm pressing on this and I'm clicking on restart and run all cells. As you can see, our kernel is ready and all these cells are executed automatically by the Jupyter Notebook. Actually, you can use them depending on the situation that you need. In general, this is how we can use the Jupyter Notebook. If you want to learn more specific details, the usage of the Jupyter Notebook, you can check out the Jupyter Notebook manual. As I've mentioned before, but we are going to see the more features as we move forward gradually throughout the course. So this is the end of using the Jupyter Notebook lesson. See you in our next lessons.